Hello, everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we are tackling something that perfectly bridges the gap between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge anatomy. You know how tiny needles placed in specific spots on your body can somehow relieve your pain, lower your stress, and just make you feel totally revitalized? Well, for thousands of years, traditional practitioners have talked about invisible energy pathways called meridians. But today, we're going to demystify those ancient concepts by looking right under our skin at the modern anatomy of something called fascia. Get ready, because understanding your body's hidden web is literally going to change how you think about pain, stress, and your own healing. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We've got a really fantastic journey ahead. First up, we'll explore meridians and the fascia web. Then, when emotions turn to glue. Number 3, how acupuncture unblocks tissue. 4, identifying your pain type. And finally, self-care for lasting relief. We are moving straight from fascinating anatomical science right into practical steps you can use today. All right, section 1, meridians and the fascia web, the anatomy of energy. So to really understand where traditional medicine meets the microscope, we first got to look at what we're actually made of. If we look at the numbers, as an adult, your body is essentially this incredible walking ecosystem that's roughly 70% water. We are mostly fluid. Now, why does this matter for pain? Well, in traditional Chinese medicine, there's this foundational principle: free flow means no pain. For a long time, the West kind of viewed this purely as some mystical concept of energy. But actually, when you remember that we're a 70% fluid-based organism, free flow isn't a metaphor. It's literal physical fluid dynamics. If your internal fluids are moving freely, your tissues are healthy. It's really that simple. And that brings us to the actual physical structure of those internal pathways, your fascia. Fascia is a continuous, fluid-based matrix of connective tissue. Think of it like a glistening internal wetsuit that wraps around every single muscle, nerve, blood vessel, and organ in your whole body. It connects your toes straight up to your head. But the absolutely crucial mechanical concept here is gliding. Because fascia is a fluid matrix, healthy fascia relies on its layers being able to slide and glide smoothly over one another as you move. When your fascia glides, you're pain-free, you're mobile, and you feel great. And this is where we see a brilliant anatomical overlap. When your acupuncturist talks about unblocking meridians, modern anatomical research actually shows that these invisible meridian lines map almost perfectly onto the body's physical fascia lines. So when an acupuncture needle goes in, it isn't just manipulating an invisible energy field. It's physically mechanically interacting with and releasing your fascia lines. It's unblocking the physical web to restore that essential fluid glide. Moving on to section 2. When emotions turn to glue, the physical cost of stress. Now, this is where we look at how our minds can actually sabotage our physical structure. Think about the last time you were really, truly stressed. Did your shoulders instantly rise up to your ears? Did your jaw clench? That isn't just a bad habit. It's a real mechanical cascade. It happens in steps. First, you experience emotional stress or anxiety. Second, your autonomic nervous system, that's the part running on autopilot, triggers a protective fight or flight response, and that causes your fascia to contract. Third, and this is the kicker, prolonged contraction causes the hyaluronic acid in your body to thicken. And finally, step 4, this leads to tissue densification and chronic pain. Let's zoom in on that third step, because it's wild. We call this the old glue effect. Hyaluronic acid is your fascia's natural slippery lubricant. It's the good stuff. It's what allows for that healthy gliding we just talked about. But when you're stuck in a state of emotional tension, the environment inside your tissues actually acidifies. That beautiful, slippery lubricant thickens up. It gets sticky. It literally turns into old glue. Your internal wetsuit becomes this stiff, rigid, sticky trap that completely limits your mobility and causes chronic tightness. Just let this quote sink in for a second. Emotions are not just in your head. They create real physical changes in your tissues. This perfectly explains something so many of us experience. I mean, have you ever noticed that an old knee injury or a shoulder pain suddenly flares up out of nowhere when you're going through a tough time at work or dealing with a personal loss? Right? It's because that emotional memory or stress is signaling your autonomic nervous system to tense up, which turns your natural lubricants into old glue right where you're already vulnerable. It's a physical double whammy. Which brings us to section 3, how acupuncture unblocks tissue, the mechanical fix. Now, what's super interesting about this mechanical fix is how multi-layered the healing process actually is. When that tiny needle enters the sticky densified fascia, it creates a microstimulation. First off, it physically restores gliding by breaking up those minor adhesions. Second, it improves fluid circulation, literally bringing fresh hydration to thin out that old glue. Third, it regulates the autonomic nervous system, basically telling your body, hey, turn off the fight or flight response. Fourth, because fascia is a continuous web, treating one single point helps the entire kinetic chain. And fifth, and I think this is the most fascinating part, by releasing the physical tension, it supports emotional release. A lot of people feel a sudden wave of calm or even tear up during a session because when you unblock the physical tissue, you're finally giving those trapped emotional stressors a way out too. All right, section 4, identifying your pain type. Are you stuck or injured? So before we get into self-care, we really need to listen to the signals our bodies are sending us. If you're dealing with a nagging pain right now, let's look at the contrast between these two types of pain to empower yourself with a little self-diagnosis. Fascia pain, the kind caused by old glue, poor posture, or trapped emotions, that generally improves with gentle movement and warmth. If you wake up super stiff but feel way better after a hot shower and a 10-minute walk, your fascia is probably just sticky. Acupuncture works absolute wonders here. On the flip side, structural damage to a muscle or a tendon typically gets much worse with movement. If moving it consistently sharpens the pain, yeah, that's not old glue, that's a structural issue that requires targeted rest and a professional assessment. Let's wrap things up with Section 5, Self-Care for Lasting Relief, Becoming an Active Participant. Because look, while acupuncture is amazing at opening the door to healing, your daily habits are what keep that door open. Let's move to a practical example, and specifically look at a joint like the knee. Here's a vital fact you might not know. Cartilage has almost zero direct blood supply. None. It can't get nutrition passively. Instead, it acts exactly like a sponge. It requires a gentle press and release motion to squish out the old waste and suck in fresh, nutrient-rich fluid. If you just sit still at a desk all day, that sponge dries out and starves. Movement is quite literally the mechanism for feeding your joints. To put that into practice, let's walk through 3 simple knee exercises. This is a perfect example of how small, consistent actions maintain that fascial gliding. First, the knee lift. Sitting down, just slowly extend your leg out with your toes flexed towards you. Then lower it. That strengthens the protective muscles. Second, the knee hug. Pull that knee gently up to your chest. That stretches out the front fascia. Third, the knee press. Sit with your heel on the floor and gently press the knee downward to straighten the leg, which releases the fascial chain right down the back of your leg. Doing these gently, little and often, that's what keeps that cartilage fed and the fascia gliding smoothly. So the crucial point here is that holistic healing is a partnership. It's a partnership between your treatments and your everyday habits. Drink plenty of water, especially after an acupuncture session, to keep that whole fluid matrix hydrated. Set a timer and move every 50 to 60 minutes to prevent the old glue from setting in. Stretch appropriately. Actively manage your emotions through breathing or relaxation, knowing that your stress directly impacts your physical tissues. And finally, unless it's a severe structural break, please avoid complete total rest after an injury. Guided, gentle movement is exactly what prevents those sticky adhesions from forming in the first place. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Next time your neck completely seizes up or your lower back aches, I want you to ask yourself, is your pain just a physical injury, or is your body actually asking you to process an emotion? You're an incredibly intelligent, beautifully interconnected system. Pain is really just a signal. By understanding the hidden web of your fascia, you no longer have to just be a passive patient. Keep moving, keep that fascia gliding smoothly, and take an active role in letting your energy flow freely. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I absolutely can't wait to dive into our next topic with you.